And away we go. It is the Nightcap, brought to you by Galactic Fried Chicken, right here on BearcatJournal.com. As always, visit www.galacticfriedchicken.com. Download the app for Android, iPhone, everything Galactic. Get yourself down to Dayton, Kentucky. Tell them to pump it up. Save yourself 15% off your order. Or go to the app, which you can access via www.galacticfriedchicken.com. And they will deliver it right to your front door, pretty much anywhere inside the 275 loop. Hi, Aaron.
Hi, Chad.
You're back home.
I am.
How's that feel? Is that good?
Yeah, but I get to drive halfway back to Cincinnati tomorrow because I left $250 worth of Costco groceries. So, no big deal.
Yeah, it's probably not a great grocery situation when your power goes out for 4 days either.
Oh, it wasn't even like food. It was just stuff we needed.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It's fine.
Sorry to hear that. All right, let's get cooking, shall we?
Let's.
We are we're at an interesting point in the life of Bearcat fandom. This is something that I'm probably going to touch on radio. I've got a couple radio dates coming up this week and next. And I wanted to start hashing it out here. A little bit different angle on it here because as it relates to the current tone and conversation on the message board. But one, I'm just going to be honest. I don't think the fan base is handling this. We're going to be in the Big 12 in July well at all. And it's not necessarily their fault. Football is in a brand new place as Luke Fickell left, and there is uncertainty there. And basketball is in a 4-year window of going from as consistent as any basketball program in the country. They were like a metronome. They were going to win 27 to 30 games. They were going to make the tournament. They probably weren't going to make the second weekend. Like, you knew exactly what you were going to get from basketball for 13 years. 9 years, sorry. The first four were the first four.
Right.
And dating back to 2007, 8, 9, 10, guess what? Twitter wasn't really a thing at that point in time. Message boards were just starting to increase in popularity. Bearcat Journal was still very new, but that was still a very much an uneasy fan base through that little window. But as this fan base looks towards the Big 12 starting in July 1st, they're not handling it well as a whole. There is anxiety, fear, uncertainty. And again, like I said, not necessarily the fan base's fault. Fans want to win. They want their program to be ultra successful. But they're not embracing the challenge that's ahead of them. They are looking at it very pessimistically. Like, yes. Cincinnati's never going to be successful in the Big 12 ever. The other thing I would say to that is Cincinnati's changed conferences like 100 times, it feels like. They're like 15 conference changes in 100 or whatever years of college sports. It's a lot. It's not 15. It's 8, I think. Missouri Valley, the Great Midwest, Conference USA, the Big East, the American, the Big 12, the Missouri Valley, if I didn't say that one already, Independent for a little bit. There's been a lot of movement in Cincinnati's history. You know what they've always managed to do, Aaron? Eventually,
figure it out.
Yeah, and I know in the short term, because we're a microwave society now, everybody needs the answers right now. Sometimes the answer is just as simple as they're going to figure it out. Like they always have. They could have, when they went into the Big East, they could have very easily become DePaul or St. John's or, any of the teams around the country that have been successful in the past and failed to recreate that success over different eras. Cincinnati has found a way to do that. But as that relates to basketball, and as it relates to how Wes Miller manages this roster going into the first year of the Big 12, how many spots come open, how many don't, where he feels like this team best needs a piece or two here or there, or a total overhaul. I'm telling you, and I've told people it's not going to be a total overhaul. I don't know. I guess people have to be heard that they disagree with that, and that's fine. But it's not going to be that.
And I think, obviously, because we are a microwave society and because people see something as close to home as Norwood, where Sean Miller's just getting rid of guys left and right, and it's not.
But Aaron,
I'm just telling you.
But just let me. I know, but let me. None of those guys played.
Look,
they weren't able to contribute on a team that was playing 6 guys by the end of the year.
I am of the understanding that a rotation will normally, even Wes, who has some deeper rotations at times, will only have somewhere between, for Cincinnati, between 8 and 10 guys. If he's running a rotation of more than 8 to 10 guys, something's not good.
Generally the way it starts at the beginning of the season, you'll have a 9-10-man rotation. And then as you get into February, that thing will whittle its way down to 8. And maybe with a 9th guy that can come in and give you some spot minutes off the bench, whatever the case may be. The problem Xavier had is they had injuries. They got down to 6 guys. They tried to find other guys that could help them, and none of them were good enough. So they are having the back of their roster lead because those players couldn't even get in to give spot minutes adequately at the end of games. The players that were wanting to run off here, and if we're specifically going to talk about the guys that people want to run off, 4th and 5th year seniors that have played a ton of basketball and were large portions of the ability to get this program to 23 wins and advancement in the NIT. Is that good enough for this fan base? No. They're a historically great franchise or program. You want to be playing in the NCAA tournament. I understand where the uneasiness comes from. But to compare it to Xavier, they're running off guys that couldn't get on the floor. Couldn't, in a time of desperation in terms of their bench, they tried to go to Kiki Tandy for a little bit. He couldn't play. Cesare Edwards couldn't play. Deontay Miles couldn't play. So it's a little bit different from that perspective, at least. I get your point. I just want to say it's a little different what's happening at Xavier.
I don't give a shit what Xavier's doing personally. I could care less. I'm just telling you where people are grumbling. People are also grumbling about the fact that they don't understand why West can't just run a guy off who has put in that kind of time when you have guys who you either want to play more or like they just want him to be the hard-nosed guy that's like, I don't care how much time you've put in here. It's time to go. You can't hack it in the Big 12. And I don't agree with that either.
Here's the thing. I think if he agreed with that, he would. I don't think he agrees with it. I think his assessment of things is different than the microwave society fans' assessment of things of this guy can't play here. Yeah, he can. There's a role, and he can play that role. It may not be the role that you want or as a fan, just dump him and go find somebody new. Like, that's how we want to do this.
Well, and I don't know. I mean, I'm of the belief that when you set up a culture that I believe that Wes is setting up, and you are a coach, like a player's coach, you can't just run dudes out. Like, that's going to become who you are at some point. And maybe the guy who wants to come to be a part of your program, especially if the NCAA does actually clamp down on these 2-time transfer rules, if they want to be part of your program for 2-3 years remaining of their collegiate career, but you're the coach who, I got something else cooking, see ya. I don't think that paints the program in a good light. Like, especially if you are a guy who labels yourself as a player's coach, who I think that's who Wes is.
You also have to think you're dealing with, so we know he does a lot of work in North Carolina. That hasn't really manifested itself on this roster yet. It has a little bit, but not like, and then they have a crew between Dollar and Morgan that have a ton of connections in Atlanta. Drew Adams and Mike Roberts are both really connected in Indiana and the Midwest. If you start burning kids, bringing them in, telling them one thing, delivering another, cutting bait at the first sign of hey, what like they're following, like a cat following a laser pointer, you're going to start pissing off all of your people that have helped you get to where you're at. Like,
I think there, to me anyway, I think there's a difference between running a guy out because you don't believe he's good enough to be a part of the Big 12, and you as a coach are like, you know what, you're just not good enough. I think there's a difference between that and saying, hey, if you want to be a part of this program going forward, here's what your new role is probably going to look like next year. I know you've been a starter before, JD, and you're going to continue to come off the bench right now because the guys that are here or coming in are going to be getting more minutes than you.
Yeah,
you can earn more if you continue to improve. There is an opportunity for that. Look at Micah this past season. He earned more minutes. But I think there's a difference between just, nah, man, this ain't it for you. And if you want to stay, here's what your role looks like. And I think that everybody thinks that these tough conversations the West needs to have are, you got to go, as opposed to what I think that they need to be, which is, here's what your new defined role is going to be should you choose to accept. If you don't want to be a part of this, I get it. But if you do, cool, here's your expectations.
I also think there are conversations, like the other thing doesn't get talked about. Every conversation is different.
Sure.
Like that, it's like every conversation, everybody thinks that the same conversation happens. There are the conversations that are, you've been here for a couple of years, we've tried to get you in the rotation, and you haven't been able to crack the rotation.
Yeah.
And it's probably best if you find a level, if you want to play and you want to be on the floor and you want to like be a 20, 30 minute guy somewhere, it's probably not going to be here. Then there's the conversation of, look, you've played, you've helped us. We're going into a new league. We want you to continue to be here and help us, but it's probably going to be more like XYZ instead of the ABC that it was in the past. And then there's the conversation. Yeah. There's the conversation of, look, like you're a foundational piece of where we're at, and we want to do everything we can to keep you around. Like, there's different buckets, and everybody just kind of assumes like there's two conversations. You're awesome, we love you, and fuck you, get out.
Well, I guess I go back to, I know you drew a comparison to football earlier, and if we draw that comparison, if the coaches did everything that the fan base wanted whenever the fan base was the loudest, Desmond Ridder would not have been a 4-year starter. He may have been.
He would have been benched for Ben Bryant, that they also hated down the road.
So Des might have been a 2-year starter. Ben would have been maybe here for a year, 2 years. I don't even know. They would have ran him out. I don't even know at this point. So at some point, you have to realize that the coaches know a little bit more than us as fans. That's why they get paid to be coaches. Like, I understand that we are all passionate. We want to win. I want to win.
Yeah.
I'm not happy with 23 wins and 2 wins in an NIT tournament. I'm not happy with that.
Nobody is. Nobody is.
I want to go back to where we can be like, hey, we're Sweet 16 bound this year or better. Absolutely. I want to be where, what bowl game are we playing in now that we're in the Big 12 and it's not going to be one of these 3 shit bowls?
Aaron wants to get back to the heartache of believing you have Elite Eight potential and losing in the round of 32.
Yes. But I guess for me, like this offseason, I've kind of just taken a step back and I'm just waiting. Like I'm not going to freak out just because something didn't happen on day 1 or day 2 or day 3. Like things will happen. There's no doubt. There's no doubt in my mind things will happen, but it doesn't need to happen at the
immediately
11th hour of the first day, done and done.
Yeah.
Like we need to have the whole roster have their decisions in. Like, I mean, look at the Bengals. It took them several days to make their first move, and they're being heralded as making perhaps one of the biggest, if not the biggest, splash in all of free agency. And it took them 4 or 5 days to do that.
Yep. It took into almost the end of April for UC to land Landers and Ollie last year.
Everyone was freaking out about that, and that turned out to be a pretty good move.
Things are going to be okay. The other thing I would say is, and look, it generates a lot of clicks on the message board, and I appreciate it, but nobody's going to. We're at a point in time. Nobody is changing their mind on how they think this should happen going forward.
Or about how they feel about Wes at this very moment. Like,
right.
It's not going to change, regardless of who he brings in the next week. You're still going to either love him or hate him.
I will check my phone in the morning before I go to the hospital. I will get in the car. I will stop at the store maybe. I will stop and get something to eat. I will go to the hospital. I will get to Kelly's room and I will check my phone again. And there will be 53 new posts of all the same people arguing one side and the same people arguing the other side in 5 different threads. You're not changing each other's minds. There are people that believe slow and steady wins the race. There are people that are the Tortoise. There are people that are the Hare. And they're not going to agree with each other.
Sometimes the Hare does win just because in that.
I'm not saying the Tortoise always wins.
Okay.
I'm just saying there's a group that wants everything fast. There's another group that understands a little bit of a slower pace.
Well, and with this being year 3, I think it's safe to say that Wes is a slow burn.
He is. He slow burned his build at Greensboro, and it worked.
I don't know why you expected him to switch things up in year 3 and have the whole roster ready to go before April 1st.
Yeah. And that one day after having their meetings that everybody is punted. It's just not how it works. But to each their own. You guys keep arguing on the message board, and I'll keep cashing checks, I guess.
Everything's going to be okay.
All right. We'll see you tomorrow night. This is the Nightcap brought to you by Galactic Fried Chicken right here on BearcatJournal.com.
See ya!